I've always lived in a quiet neighborhood, the kind of place where you don't even lock your doors sometimes. That was until last winter, when my perception of safety was completely shattered. It was a Friday night, and I was home alone. My parents were away on a weekend trip, and my younger brother was staying with our grandparents. It was just me, the house, and the howling winter wind outside. I had settled in for a night of binge-watching Netflix, wrapped in my favorite blanket, when I heard the first sound. It was a faint noise, almost like a rustling, coming from the backyard. At first I dismissed it, thinking it was just the wind. About an hour later, I got up to grab a snack from the kitchen. That's when I heard it again, this time louder and more distinct. It wasn't the wind. I turned off the lights in the kitchen and cautiously peeked out the back window. My heart dropped. There was a man standing near the shed, partially hidden in the shadows. He wasn't moving, just standing there, watching the house. Panic set in. I quickly checked all the doors and windows to make sure they were locked. I grabbed my phone, planning to call the police, but then the man was gone. I convinced myself I was just overreacting. Maybe it was a neighbor cutting through the yard. Still, I couldn't shake the unease that settled in my chest. As the night wore on, I kept hearing strange noises, soft footsteps outside, the creak of the fence gate. I was too scared to investigate, so I stayed in the living room, keeping all the lights on. Around midnight, the noises stopped, and I began to relax, thinking whoever it was had finally left. That's when I heard the back door handle jiggle. I froze, my heart pounding in my ears. Someone was trying to get in. I ran to the front door and called 911. While on the phone with the operator, I heard the jiggling stop, followed by a loud bang as if someone had thrown their body against the door. The operator stayed on the line with me until the police arrived. When they got there, the backyard was empty, but they found fresh footprints leading from the back door to the side gate. They said it looked like someone had been watching the house for a while. They searched the area but never found anyone. I stayed with a friend for the rest of the weekend, and my parents installed security cameras after they got home. To this day, I don't know who that man was or what his intentions were, but I'll never forget the feeling of being watched while I was all alone in my house. I work late nights, so I'm no stranger to being home alone at odd hours. My wife often travels for work, and one particular night, she was out of town, leaving me alone in the house. I'm not one to get freaked out easily, but what happened that night still sends chills down my spine. It was around 2 a.m., and I had just finished a late shift. I grabbed a beer and sat down on the couch to unwind. The house was quiet, and I was scrolling through my phone when I heard a noise from upstairs. It was subtle at first, almost like footsteps. My first thought was that it was the house settling, but the more I listened, the more it sounded like someone was walking down the hallway. I stood up and listened closely. The creaking continued, growing louder, as if whoever it was coming closer to the stairs. My heart raced as I realized there shouldn't be anyone upstairs. I grabbed a kitchen knife, the only thing nearby that I could use for protection, and slowly made my way to the staircase. I stopped dead in my tracks when I saw the shadow of someone standing at the top of the stairs. They didn't move, didn't say anything, just stood there in the dark. I was frozen in place, clutching the knife, unsure of what to do. After what felt like an eternity, the figure finally turned and disappeared down the hallway. I bolted out of the house, not even stopping to grab my keys or shoes. I called the police from my front yard, shaking and terrified. When they arrived, they did a thorough search of the house but found no one. No sign of forced entry, nothing out of place. They suggested it might have been my imagination playing tricks on me after a long day at work. But I know what I saw. I know there was someone, or something, in my house that night. I ended up staying at a friend's house for a few days, and when I returned, I installed a security system. Even now, every time I come home late at night, I can't shake the feeling that someone is still up there, watching me. I had always felt safe in my home, especially in my neighborhood. It's the kind of place where everyone knows each other, and we all look out for one another. But one night, my sense of security was shattered in the most terrifying way. I had just moved into my new apartment a few months ago and was enjoying living on my own for the first time. My building was small, only 6 units, and most of the tenants were elderly. I had a neighbor, Tom, who lived right across the hall from me. He was in his late 50s, quiet, and always kept to himself. I didn't think much of him, other than a friendly wave here and there. One evening I was home alone, reading in bed, when I heard a light tapping sound. It was coming from the window behind me. Startled, I turned around, but there was nothing there. I shrugged it off and went back to reading, but the tapping continued, more insistent this time. I got up and went to the window, pulling the curtains aside, and that's when I saw him. Tom was standing just outside my window, staring right at me. My apartment was on the ground floor, so he must have been standing in the bushes near my window. I quickly closed the curtains and locked the window, my heart racing. What the hell was he doing outside my window at night? I tried to calm down, convincing myself it was just a harmless coincidence, but then I heard it. The doorknob jiggling. Someone was trying to get into my apartment. I ran to the door and looked through the peephole. It was Tom. He was standing right there, trying to open my door. I yelled for him to leave, but he didn't respond. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911, all the while listening to the sound of him messing with the lock. The police arrived within minutes, and when they questioned Tom, he acted like he didn't know what they were talking about. He claimed he was just checking on me because he heard a noise. But I knew the truth. He had been watching me, waiting. After that night, I moved out of the apartment as soon as I could. I still wonder what would have happened if I hadn't been awake that night. I don't think I ever want to know.